We think fertility is a given, but it is not always. I always think about your fertility as an orchestra. You have your conductor, and there's all of these different instruments that come together to play a beautiful piece, right? And the same thing comes from fertility. We need our ovaries, we need our tubes, we need a uterus, we need sperm. But the primary factor that we see is the egg.
I am really excited to dig into this topic. We're going to be talking about fertility and IVF outcomes in perimenopause. And we have the amazing queen of egg freezing, Dr. Jaime Knopeman here.
I've been in this field of medicine for a long time. And I think one of the things that we as women find the most troubling and challenging is that our life goals and our fertility do not align, right? So egg freezing provides women the opportunity to almost, have it all, right? Because then what they can do is they can have their fertility journey whenever they're ready, but they can also have their professional career. We can get women pregnant way beyond menopause, right? Percentage is significantly lower, and it may require more aggressive fertility measures, but it doesn't mean that you're completely doomed.
If you were sitting across from a woman right now in her 40s who's feeling like she's running out of time, what would you want her to feel or understand about her fertility and her future of potentially having babies?
Listen.
Hey there, sisters. Welcome back to the Period Whisperer podcast. Today is one of our amazing expert interview days, and I am really excited to dig into this topic because for me, it's not an expertise of mine, but it's so relevant to many of my clients. We're going to be talking about fertility and IVF outcomes in perimenopause, and we have the amazing queen of egg freezing, Dr. Jaime Knopeman here. Welcome to the show. I'm so grateful that you're taking time today to be with us, Jaime.
Thank you so much. That's a fun title, the Queen of Egg Freezing.
I like it. That's what you're known as, I heard, as I did my research. Did you know
Yes, that is no. I know egg freezing is my thing. It's
Okay.
funny. I always said like I grew up in the fertility world as egg freezing was growing up. So I feel like our paths have aligned.
I love that. I think that's amazing. Well, why don't we start with that? Can you tell us how you came to be known as the Queen of Egg Freezing?
Yeah. So I graduated. So when I was a fellow, right, egg freezing was sort of it's like finding its sea legs, as we like to say in the fertility world. And right after I graduated, the ASRM removed the experimental label. So I was there for a lot of the early studies. And in my first job that I took, I was the only woman in the practice. And I got there and my boss was like, "You're 35 and you have ovaries. You can be the director of egg freezing." I'm like, "Okay, cool." Um, and so that sort of stuck. And then I came here to CCRM and I was the director of egg freezing. So I've had it's just sort of something that I've been very passionate about and been very fortunate enough to be in charge of or, the leader of in different fertility clinics.
Amazing. Well, and I'm excited. We were just talking before this that you have an incredible book launching soon, and I'm going to have you talk about that. But we're going to dig into your mind today and try to share some real value for the women out there who are over 35, considering, still wanting to have babies and freeze eggs. But so maybe let's just kind of dive right in if you don't mind. I think
Sure. Yeah. So I guess what I would say is I've been in this field of medicine for a long time. And I think one of the things that we as women find the most troubling and challenging is that our life goals and our fertility do not align, right? Most of us are really hitting our peak in our careers in our 30s, right? And so frequently we put off starting a family because we're focused on our professional goals. And then we turn around and unfortunately, it's oftentimes too late. So egg freezing provides women the opportunity to almost have it all, right? Because then what they can do is they can have their fertility journey whenever they're ready, but they can also have their professional career.
So is there an ideal window to freeze your eggs then? If you're like leaning into your professional career and you're thinking I might or will want to have children later and I just not right now, like is there a window that's ideal for that?
I think the younger the better. My girls are always like, "Oh my God, my mom says we're going to freeze our eggs when we're 22." I have two teenage daughters. I joke around with them, and it doesn't mean they're going to freeze their eggs at 22. But what I mean by that is the younger you are, the better the quality of the egg, right? The more potential that egg has. So we want women to freeze in their 20s. when they are at the peak of their fertility, right? I say like the OG egg freezers, the egg freezers that were doing this, the women freezing when I was, still in fellowship, they were freezing when they were in their 40s. So it should not have come as any surprise to us, fertility doctors, when the outcome of their cycles were not good, right? Because they were already at a place where the egg quality was compromised. If we freeze our eggs younger, we will get more eggs and they will be of better quality. And so they'll do what we want them to do, which is allow us to have a child down the road.
So is that ultimately like the challenge, like for women? So for women who didn't freeze in their 20s, who are now maybe over 35, even, in their early 40s, wanting to freeze eggs, is that really the challenge? Is that we're looking at quality and quantity of egg that's going to be different then?
Yeah, so that is really the what gets most of us is egg quality and quantity. Now, that's not to say that sperm doesn't play a role or the uterus or the fallopian tubes, right? Like the fertility is it. I always think about your fertility as an orchestra.
Mhm.
So, like to me, you have your conductor and then you have the flute section and the cello and there's all of these different instruments that together come together to play a beautiful piece, right? And the same thing comes from fertility. We need our ovaries, we need our tubes, we need a uterus, we need sperm. But the primary factor that we see, particularly in metropolitan cities and as countries, the average age of first birth gets older and older, is the age of the egg.
The age of the egg. So then does the amount of our hormones, like as we know that fluctuates and changes as we get older, like does that play a big role or not? Because we can take hormones to kind of encourage that journey.
So we can get women pregnant way beyond menopause, right? Like I had a consult today of a lady who was 52 who was like, "Oh, I think I'm ready to have a baby," right? Like we know that the quality of her eggs at 52 is not going to result in a healthy, viable pregnancy. If she uses an egg donor, she can carry a pregnancy even if she's in menopause because the uterus can be manipulated to do what it needs to do, really, as even when we're past having our periods. That
Wow.
doesn't mean that you should, right? Like I'm not sitting here and saying every 52-year-old should have a baby, right? Because there's other things that come along with it. But we can make your uterus responsive in ways that you would not expect it to be, even when you're in menopause.
Wow, that's fascinating. Like just hearing that that can be manipulated that way is so
Yeah.
interesting. So the big concern and the big thing that women in perimenopause want to be aware of or thinking about is quality and quantity of eggs, specifically if they're wanting to use their own eggs.
Correct. Because what has traditionally happened is if I come here, let's say I come in at 38 and I want to have a child and my eggs no longer can make healthy embryos, I could turn to an egg donor and I could use the egg of a younger individual
Yeah,
to create an embryo that then I carry in pregnancy.
right.
But in many ways, egg freezing allows women to be their own egg donor,
Yeah.
right? Because if you think about it, if I froze my eggs at 25 and then at 38, my egg quality wasn't good, I'm going to look back to my 25-year-old eggs and say, okay, I'm my own donor now.
That feels really exciting to be able to hear. Like, I don't know, is that what excites you about this as well? Thinking like, oh,
Oh,
I can help,
yes.
yeah, help women have, as they say, the opportunity that they want as their own donor later in life.
Completely. And like, listen, I'm always saying we can't have it all. Like
Yeah,
it is very hard to work, to have a career, to be a mom, all of it.
yeah.
But we can find ways that we can you know, push things forward in a way that then we dictate how the path goes as opposed to our bodies dictating it.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I love this. It's fascinating to me. So for women though who maybe, because now we're talking to women who are already in this age box who may not have been, that may not have been an option in their 20s. Like when did egg freezing actually become a more common situation for women,
The
opportunity?
experimental label was removed by the American Society of Reproductive Medicine in 2012.
Okay.
But the real bump that we saw was actually COVID. COVID was a huge surge in egg freezing and really any fertility preservation treatment. And I've thought a lot about it because I was like, why would COVID have done that?
Yeah.
But a few things. Number one, people were not going into an office every day, right? So they had more flexibility in their schedule. So that was a big thing. But also, a lot of people gave thought to what do I really want in life, right? And being told I have to sit home and this is a whole, like, we're starting to question our mortality and how life is going to go. And I think a lot of people thought, well, I really want the opportunity to be a parent one day.
Yeah.
And so that pushed egg freezing to the forefront.
Okay. Okay, so along that timeline, though, then I guess it is realistic to think women right now who are 40, might not have even had that opportunity as much or known much about it as a normal practice. So for those who are listening to the show right now, who might have, more diminished ovarian reserve or a lower egg quality, like, are they kind of, I don't want to say this, this was a question from one of my clients. Are you
Yeah.
doomed to have only like 2 to 3 eggs retrieved? Like, is there anything they can do to in
Well,
their
I
own
wouldn't say
lifestyle?
so. This is an interesting, like, I once gave a talk, I'll never forget it. A woman stood up and she said, it's really unfair. And I said, what's unfair? She said that my generation didn't get egg freezing, but this younger generation does. And
Mm,
I said to her, it's true, but we stand on the shoulders of the people that come before us, right? Like, I have a lot of things my mom didn't have. Like, I'm going through menopause, I'm going to get HRT. My mom didn't get that, right? Like,
yeah,
it's
100%.
so we can use our voices to affect change for the people that come behind us. And she's right. She may not be able to freeze her eggs, but
Yeah,
maybe her niece or her colleagues or her best friends can.
for
But I
sure.
don't, I wouldn't say we're doomed. It does not mean at 40 that you have no healthy eggs left. That's not what that means. Your percentage is significantly lower and it may require more aggressive fertility measures,
Okay.
but it doesn't mean that you're completely doomed. And there are many ways to have a family, many beautiful ways to have a family. You may have not thought of them, growing up. Most of us, we play house, when we're little girls.
Yeah,
Like, you may have not been like, oh, I think I'm going to use an egg donor, right? Or I think I'm going to use the surrogate, whatever it is. But there are so many ways to build a family. And if you are open to them, we can help you have that, fulfill that dream.
right, right. I understand, and I appreciate you saying that. But as in terms of just like action steps for women now who are wanting to still try with their own egg for their own situation, are there lifestyle things that they can be doing or things they can be working on that might help?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. It's something we get asked all the time. Supplements, acupuncture, diet, modifications, and lifestyle. There's no data that has repeatedly shown definitive correlation between lifestyle and egg health,
Mm,
right? With that being said, do I think that we should be our best versions of ourselves? Of course, because we're going to hopefully get pregnant.
yeah,
So, do we think that you should, smoke, drink a bottle of wine every night and not sleep? No, that is a very bad idea.
yeah,
But if you have been like, if you have a crazy job and you drink a lot of coffee, you shouldn't blame yourself for your fertility. See, that's what I struggle with because I think especially as women, we tend to shoulder guilt, blame, and we're like, it's my fault.
yeah.
How many times a day do you hear myself, my girls, my female like partners say, I'm sorry?
Yeah.
Right? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And I'm always like, what are you sorry for? Like, you
Uh,
didn't do anything, right? Most of the reason why we're here or we're having fertility struggles or a lot of the medical illnesses that we face had nothing to do with our actions. It just had to do with our genetics.
yeah. Interesting. So there's no correlation you're saying between egg quality and lifestyle. Is that what
Well, I'm not saying there's none. I would say there's no definitive correlation that has been
okay.
shown repeatedly.
Repeatedly.
And every field of medicine, we sort of have a governing body. For us, it's the American Society of Reproductive Medicine. So, like when you sit for your boards, you study all of the practice releases. If you go there and look up lifestyle and egg quality, there's not going to be, oh, this study showed that women who drank 3 cups of coffee a day had worse eggs than those who didn't.
Yeah.
Now, it makes sense to all of us that we should try and live our best life,
Yeah.
but it doesn't correlate that in repeated studies.
Got it. Okay, that's helpful. Thanks for clarifying that. So then I guess, am I right in saying that there wouldn't be anything different you would recommend to a 20-year-old versus a 40-year-old when it comes to wanting to go through an egg freezing process, like in preparation for?
I mean, I would say to 20-year-olds, you still like don't do this during the most stressful time of your life
Right.
because it's just going to add more stress, right? But if you are somebody who is socially drinking, I don't think stopping all alcohol is going to change the quality of your eggs. Because we know, I mean, like it's a joke, but how do most people say they got pregnant? Like, oh, I drank too much wine and there you go. Right. Like, so I think it's sort of like, right, to say
Yeah,
that. Now, recreational drugs have to stop, right? If you're a smoker, we know that's not good for you.
yeah,
If you ate McDonald's or some unhealthy food, every day, I would tell you to stop that, whether you're freezing your eggs or you're not, because that's terrible for your heart. So
totally.
it's like sort of common sense.
Yeah, there's some normal things. Are there any, again, I think I'm just trying to think of the clients listen or the women listening to this at this age right now. They're probably asking some of these questions. Is there again, anything specific that needs to be done differently or encouraged differently? Like even medications they should be talking to their fertility doctor about that, or protocols that would be different for a woman in a 40 plus age box versus the younger
Yeah,
ones?
I think this is really where lab quality makes a difference, right? So I say frequently that as your fertility doctor, you can like me or not like me. I hope you like me because it's going to be a long journey, but the real success comes from the men and the women who work in the lab behind me, right? So the quality of the IVF lab dictates a lot of the success that we have or we don't have.
Mhm.
And as our eggs age, the lab quality needs to be even more attention to detail.
Okay.
Why is that? Because older eggs are less resilient in terms of their ability to be, hit with something and then come back and repair.
Yeah.
Right. So if you look at success rates for IVF clinics across the country, we really see which clinics are good and which are not as good is really, I always say, in your like 38 to 40-year-old population,
Okay.
because those are the eggs that are really starting to, have make changes. The women in their 20s and 30s, early 30s, even if your lab quality conditions are not supreme, those eggs can probably tolerate it, right? So
Yeah.
the older the egg, you need better lab quality conditions.
And how can someone research that if they're,
Yeah, it is not, I get asked this all the time, like, oh, you're saying your lab is good, but how do we know? It's hard.
yeah,
I'd say go to resources like SART, the Society of Assisted Reproductive Technologies, Fertility IQ, ask your obstetrician, ask, if you have like an internal medicine doc that you trust, ask those people because they're generally in the know and they can help guide you to better clinics.
okay, interesting. So do that kind of research first because that lab, and obvious, I guess if the clients that are having success coming out of those labs, so I guess if there's testimonials of women over
A
38.
100%. Like if you see, oh, all of my friends who are also my peers are having success, it's a good sign that that clinic is doing something good.
Yeah. How many, I'm just so curious about this. I've had my children, so I'm kind of past this, but how many rounds of IVF would one person consider doing before maybe they look for a different way to have
Yeah.
a family? Like just,
That's a great question and something I struggle with a lot as a doctor. Like, my role as the fertility doctor, yes, it's to do the fertility. And as I get older, I really have realized this, but it's also to guide patients to the best way for them to build a family.
Mhm.
Because unfortunately, fertility, it is a business, right? So we know people will sometimes do endless rounds of IVF with really no chance or very minimal chance of success, right?
Mhm.
My job as the doctor is to step in and say, listen, I don't think this is going to work, right? And that may be after 3 cycles, it may be after 10 cycles, right? Every case is different, but you have to constantly be reevaluating the situation because you don't want patients to get into a place where they've physically, emotionally, and financially, they're tapped out. And now they're not going to use a sperm or an egg donor when they could have had a family that way.
Yeah, yeah. Like, would you say, is it hard on the female? I mean, pregnancy is hard on a female body, but delivery is hard on postpartum is like how challenging, and I can't really quantify it, I guess. There's not a tangible way, but in your experience, is it hard on the female body and brain to go through IVF?
I mean, listen, my 20 plus year old egg freezers who come in, they do this one time, they get 20 eggs, they're on low dose meds and they're, only stimulating for 9 days. I'm sure it's hard, but it is not like a patient who is 42, who it takes her 16 days of meds to get to the egg retrieval. And she's done this 8 times. Like in my opinion, that's like a warrior, right? Because that is a very, very hard journey. It really, really is. And I don't think that we can minimize the not just the physical, but the emotional toll that plays on an individual, right? I mean, it's very hard, and not just an individual, but on a marriage, right? On a partnership, because you're in like it's such a hard place to be.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Do you ever see situations where someone is coming in and, maybe the ovarian reserve of the eggs that are coming after the medications is just two or three? Like, do you ever see it jump up after a few rounds?
There's definitely variability in cycles. And what I generally say to patients in my experience, and I'm only an N of one,
Yeah.
I have not seen people make two eggs and then people make 22 eggs, right? Your range is not that great. But can somebody make two eggs and then make five eggs and then make three eggs? Sure, they could, right? Because there's variability.
Yeah.
But it's unlikely that they're going to go from two to 22. And I don't say that because I'm trying to be like a Debbie Downer. I say it because I want people to have realistic expectations,
Sure.
right? So if I say, listen, you've made two 10 times over, I don't think in this cycle you're going to make 22.
Yeah, for sure. So in my practice, I'm kind of like on the holistic side where I'm often looking at like detoxification of the hormones. Once we take the hormones in, we're trying to get the hormones out. Is that considered at all, or does detoxification of like liver and gut of these hormones ever impact the fertility?
I mean, I'm sure it probably does, right? And like that's the thing. I always say to patients, just because you don't have success with IVF, it does not mean you can't get pregnant, right? If
Mm,
you are releasing an egg and you have a partner who has sperm
yeah.
and you have a uterus, like you can always get pregnant, right? So you shouldn't like I'm not telling people I'm here to steal your hope and, think that the world is never I'm just my job, I feel, is to point you in the place that's probably going to give you the most success while also being conscious of the what it takes on your body, your emotions, and your finances.
Yeah.
I have to think about all those because otherwise I don't think I'm really doing my job.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. What would you say are the biggest myths that you wish women like in their late 30s and 40s would unlearn about fertility?
I mean, I think the biggest myth is that it never goes away, right? When I did an abstract in fellowship and I called it Menses doesn't equal motherhood because I think people are always assuming if we get our periods, that means we're fertile, right? And
Uh,
so that's not true.
yeah.
And because I will sit here and have patients come in their mid to late 40s being like, oh, I don't understand why I'm not getting pregnant. And I'm thinking, wait, what do you mean you don't understand why you're not getting pregnant? Like, you're 46 years old, right? But
Yeah.
I'm getting regular periods, right? So I think there's this misconception
Yeah.
that it just goes at a normal rate until you get menopause and it's a line in the sand. Like there was the Times did a whole piece about 35 and how like 35 at 35 it's not the cliff, et cetera, et cetera, but we've never said that 35 was the cliff. It's a gradual slow decline.
Yeah.
So yeah, 35 was this age where we would recommend women do invasive testing, amniocentesis and CVS when they were pregnant, because the risk of miscarrying from an amnio or CVS was lower than the risk of having an abnormal pregnancy. That was that line.
Yeah.
But it's a gradual down, the whole since the when you get your period. So I
Yeah.
think we have to sort of reframe how we think about it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Being that you've been kind of in this world of cycles and women's health and women's menstruation, is there anything that you learned that you were like, what? I should have wished I'd known that when I was 13 getting
I'm
my
telling you, I remember being like, had no idea. I even as a resident, OBGYN resident, I was like, yeah, like I think I'll have my first kid at like 38. Like I really thought that. Then I got to fellowship and I was like, holy, I don't know if we can curse on this platform. So, holy ass. I was
Yeah.
like, oh my goodness, I did not know. I thought it was like, okay. So then I really realized like it's actually pretty hard to get pregnant. And I
Mm,
have teenage daughters. So trust me, I'm not like advocating everyone go out there and like contraception be damned.
yeah.
But it's pretty hard to get pregnant, right? Human reproduction is very inefficient.
Yeah.
So we
Huh.
forget that and we go through our whole life assuming we're just going to try and we're going to get pregnant.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what you're like surprised about is that it's
Yeah.
inefficient. Love that. Human reproduction is inefficient.
And I am such a fan of efficiency. I have like 4 computer screens in my office at one time. So I'm like, wait, this is not an efficient way to reproduce.
There's only a few. What do you say to your daughters? As I have a teen daughter too, so I'm so curious.
Yeah.
Like, what are some of the things that you're
They're
like,
so sick of me. They're like, you're so cringy, mom, and you're so weird.
oh my God.
Um, well, I say to them, like, it's really like your body, it's a beautiful thing,
Yeah.
right? Like you don't want to take that for granted. And it's something that we need to sort of like cherish and be proud of as opposed to being ashamed of.
I understand. I love that. It's nice. Yeah, I agree. My daughter is like, she will not talk to me about her period at all. And I'm like, come on.
I
Like,
know. I'm like, oh my God, this is what I do my whole life, you
I
know?
know. I'm like, this is what we talk about. People pay me to talk about this.
I know,
Oh, that's
exactly.
so funny. Yeah, okay. Tell us a bit about your book because I'm very excited about it. I know it's coming out. And first of all, congratulations. I think it's such a huge accomplishment to write a book, and I love the work that you do. But what is it called? When is it coming? What are your hopes for it?
Yes, it was a big, staying in the OB world, I'm like, birthing that was a huge, huge project, right? People are, it's so funny. Now I'll hear people like, oh, I'm going to write a book. I'm like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
good luck. So it's pub date is January 13th. So it's available for pre-order now on Amazon and Barnes Noble, but it'll be released on the 13th. It is called Own Your Fertility. And that's really what we're going for, like the motto of the book. I think we want women and men to really take control of their bodies and their fertility. And we felt the best way to do this was by arming people with real information. And that was the impetus behind the book. I always said, like, I'm very loud, but I'm only as loud as the 4 walls of my office. And how do I make my voice be known to more people? And that was really through writing a book.
Oh, I love that. And I love that you just said, so this book is for women and men, then you
Yes.
encourage both people to be reading it who if they're
Yeah, because infertility comes from sperm too.
Ah,
And men should know about what happens, A, to themselves, but also to the women they're going to support or the partners they're going to support over the course of their lives.
yeah. You're right. We often, I think, as women take it all on ourselves, and I think it's just also left for us to pick up sometimes, but
Yeah,
it takes two. It takes two.
it definitely does.
Can you give us a little teaser out of it, like any specific things that you
Well, I did want to call the book Wear Sunscreen and Freeze Your Eggs
ah,
because I thought that was a great title, but we got shot down by the publisher. However, it did remain a chapter title. So I was very happy about that. It's written in a real sort of like no BS, no nonsense, like your girlfriend's guide. Like I do tend to speak to patients as if they're my friends or my sisters or, daughters now. I want it to be relatable. I want it to be digestible. And I really open up about my own life and my own journey. I did not have infertility. I had other struggles, but really thinking about like life is not linear, right? Our life is circuitous, it's messy. And we think fertility is a given, but it is not always. And we need to know about what could happen so we can make educated decisions.
yeah, I love that. So it's kind of a book that gives hope, it gives direction, no BS. That's what you're kind of
No
hoping
BS.
for.
Yes,
And
exactly.
would it be a book that you'd recommend anyone who has any interest in having babies one day should read this book?
I think anyone who's interested in having babies, I think people who are past the prime to help other women or men in their life, right? Like, yes, I would say it's probably geared mostly towards 20s, 30s, and 40s. But we know I sit with a lot of, and this is my favorite consult, moms and their daughters. And
Mm,
maybe it's because I have 2 girls, but like what can I learn from my daughters? What can I learn from my nieces so that I can help them? Just it's going back to the woman who stood up and said, this is unfair. My generation couldn't freeze our eggs. And I say, you're right, but what can we do for the women around us?
yeah, I love that. Dr. Jamie, this has been amazing. But if you were sitting across from a woman right now in her 40s who's again, feeling like she's running out of time, what would you want her to feel or understand about her fertility and her future of potentially having babies?
I would say that it's not over, right? It just may not be achieved in the way that you imagined it to be achieved, right? So you have to sort of reshift. Before we hung up, I have a patient who I love her. She's awesome. She's 41. She just is coming out of a failed marriage, had a pregnancy loss. Like it's not been great. She's been here. She freezes we've frozen eggs for the past few months. She doesn't get a ton, right? She gets 4 or 5 every time,
Okay.
but she believes that she wants to have a child with a donor sperm source, she thinks, at some point in the future. She's not ready to do it yet, but she wants to keep her options open. We always talk about this was not the way she dreamed it would be, right? She did not dream about using a sperm donor. She did not dream about freezing her eggs on multiple different occasions. But she wants to do everything she can now so that when she is ready to use a sperm donor, she has set herself up. So we have to like just reshape the picture in our head, right? And know that there's so many different ways for me to be a mom, and that's okay if it doesn't match with the dream I had when I was a young child.
It reminds me of like having a birth plan when you are pregnant. Everyone's like, have your birth plan, but be ready to let it go.
I actually love that. I'm going to steal that from you. I think you're right because I remember being an OB resident
Mm.
and women would come in with a birth plan and I would be like, oh my God, that's their ticket to the operating room. Because if you're so rigid fighting, like, I need to have this music, I need to have the ball, I don't want to have the IV, what happens is it all goes amok. And
Yeah.
then we would see women who would come in being like, I want an elective C-section. And they'd be like 10 centimeters, right? And I'm
Yeah.
like, you just got to push. Like this kid's coming out right now. And they're like, no,
Yeah.
but I want my C-section. I'm like, that's not happening. Right. So we have to be like, we can only control what we can control. We
Yeah.
can say that we would prefer it to be this way, but we have to be open to any way.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Thank you so much. This has been, I love your energy. I love how you're helping women. And I love that mindset of like standing on the shoulders of the women that came before us. Cause I think,
I think about it's also in Barbie. I don't know if you watch Barbie. There's a beautiful line where she says, like, our girls go so far so they can turn around, and like our daughters go forward so they can turn around and see how far they come. And that reminds me also a lot of that. Like we only make progress if we make progress for the people behind us, and then they make progress. And it's like it builds on itself. So that's what I'm just here to help the next generation.
and it feels like, I don't know, I feel like that's a very empowering way to perspective to look at it. Like this is how we're making our difference, carrying that
Yep.
baton the next check for the next checkpoint so that we can move it forward for the people who come
Because
beyond.
I think about when I like the women who came before me in med school, like now 50% of medical school are female, right? But my mentors, that was not the case for them. Those women worked their butts off to get in and to prove themselves so that women like me could have a place, right? So what can I do for the women behind me, both in medicine and in life, right? Like I think we're doing it now with HR hormone replacement therapy because we never talked about it. People went through menopause in silence, and like now we're doing a better job so that that next generation has the opportunity to not suffer in silence.
Yeah, and even just the communication. Well, even again, just this book that you've written, I think does really passes that baton further because it's going to help like the 20-year-olds, the teenagers, our daughters understand what their options are, how to plan for their future in a way that allows them to get closer to having it all, I think.
100%.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Jaime. I really appreciate you. This has been
Thank
amazing.
you so much for having me. It was wonderful.
Yeah. How do we get into your world? I know the book's coming out and we talked about that, but is there anywhere else that we can, if we want to learn more from you, if we want to get into your world, where do we go?
Sure. I have an Instagram page, a professional page. It's just at Dr. Jaime Knopeman. I spell my first name Jaime, which I feel like my parents did me a massive disservice for doing that because nobody can ever find me. And then I work at a clinic called CCRM in New York City.
Okay.
If anyone ever is nearby and wants to come in as a patient or whatever it may be.
Yeah, amazing. I will put all of those notes in the show notes for the sisters listening. I have been to your Instagram page. You've got some amazing tips and videos there. So
Oh,
go and
thank
follow
you.
Dr. Jaime, you guys. It's some really good things on there. Even just hearing you talk today, I was like, oh, I remember you talking about that in one of your reels. So thank you so much. I'm grateful for what you do. I know that you're making a big difference for a lot of women. And again, yeah, thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much. Have a lovely day.
You too. And sisters, now you have, I think, a really cool tool to advance your life, to pass the baton forward, to be more in your life and not just less on a scale. We'll catch you in the next episode.